Hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful video here with Level Up Mental Health. My name is Swizz. Looking forward to providing this video here about triggers. A very kind of common term and common, I can't even talk, concept related to therapy here. So we'll look to kind of explore what triggers are, what we could do to kind of recognize them, and as well as what we could do to uh, try to kind of practice, especially reduce the intensity of that they may bring us, or kind of the outcomes, the causes from the triggers, right? So let's take a look at the worksheet here that we got, and yeah, here we are. So this first area here is about kind of a trigger self-assessment. So one of the things to kind of emphasize is that it can take many forms and are sometimes unpredictable. So, and just to kind of back it up for what a trigger is something that occurs in our environment that leads us to have a particular responses or reactions to certain things, right? So, kind of the common thing is, a lot of the time, especially related to trauma, if there's a particular sight or sound or smell or even just a particular event, a situation, even what's interesting here is you look at the checklist, a feeling can be a trigger for a particular response that you may lead into to experience a fight, flight, or freeze response. That's the biggest thing, right? So a trigger is something that's leading you into that crisis mode response. So what's interesting too is about the checklist here, again, because a lot of times we may be able to identify if there is anything like a particular trauma incident or something of that nature. But um, one of the ones, excuse me, that I always like to emphasize is that these particular feelings, such as sadness, anger, loneliness, frustration, anxiety, boredom, all those particular emotions can also be a particular trigger for that, right? If you experience this intensity of those emotions, it can lead us into that fight, flight, or freeze response. So definitely just be able to kind of think about if there's anything in particular that you feel you're experiencing that leads, that may lead a trigger for yourself, right? So, what are the ABCs of it, right? So, what's important to understand when we're looking at triggers is being able to kind of know where they come from, right? And that's where this comes from. We talked about this earlier about being able to identify if you're trying to understand a behavior using the ABC method. And what that means is being able to break down what is the antecedent, what is behavior, and what is the consequence, right? So if you are able to know what the behavior is, right, like the one down here, it relates to kind of a child one where you're punching a wall. We're able to kind of look at the antecedent before or what the trigger is, where if it's related to feeling angry and embarrassed, right? There's emotion there associated with it. And even before that, up there, the mother criticized my appearance, those could kind of be interchangeable for the particular behavior of punching the wall. Or if you're feeling angry and embarrassed, locking yourself in a room, right? And then obviously there's going to be a consequence from when that behavior occurred. So if we're able to know or kind of utilize this system here, the ABC, understanding what the behavior is and what followed before and what followed after, we're able to kind of break down again what is going on and the kind of the connection that we have between all three, right? So this just kind of gives more examples about what that is. So understanding triggers. So again, with triggers, again, it bears a literal or symbolic similarity to an aspect of unresolved trauma experience. So that's essentially just saying again that even though the traumatic experience may not be happening in this particular moment, it may bring a similarity or connection from what had happened before into leading that particular response, right? So obviously through this, there's could be a lot of things that's very traumatizing. It has issues with it, and a lot of the times the reactions that we have are conditioned, right? Because at the end of the day, if we're going to fight, flight, or freeze, we're trying to get into our safety mode, right? We want to make sure that we're protected to ensure that we're safe, right? So, what does a trigger look like? Well, certain things to kind of identify is where you feel you have a sudden flashback, your reaction to the situation seem more intense than are warranted, you feel stuck in your reaction, unable to step back and reflect, You have a defense reaction that is fight, flight, freeze. They also say collapse here. You seem to watch your reaction unfold, not feeling control, as though if another part of you is having the reaction, and we lose a sense of time. So all those can really have an impact when we experience those triggers. Now, one of the things that's often kind of recognized, and especially related to mental health and themes associated, is that there's a lot of kind of negative connotations. And one of the things to emphasize is that there can also be some positive triggers that can occur, right? Particular experiences, themes, parties, whatever it is, memories that may kind of evoke enjoyment and calmness. Those are triggers as well too, right? Because at the end of the day, it's causing a particular reaction towards that, which is the ultimate goal, right? Even though kind of the negative triggers relates to the fight or flight, the positives evoke kind of that calmness or supportive emotion that we're looking for. So, what are some different types of triggers? Well, the first ones we have related to time. So if there's a particular date, this is very common associated with grief, right? If there's an anniversary of a death coming up, or the holidays, things of that nature, all of those are time-related triggers. Places, again, kind of the same thing. If you pass by kind of a local diner or something like that, where there's a very traumatic experience and you have the visceral kind of reaction to it and uncontrollable kind of reaction, that's a place-related trigger. Relational triggers, so particular relationships or powerful feelings that we may experience. So especially if we're having the feelings about abandonment, rejection, humiliation, shame, panic, yearning, and rage, all those can be easily triggered through the ups and downs that kind of occur in a relationship. So if you're in a relationship and you experience one of those emotions, it could trigger back to that particular traumatic experience. Internal triggers. So this is kind of if we've experienced the repressed sort of emotions or feelings, kind of unearthing it within ourselves leads to us being triggered. And I believe the last one here, sensory triggers. Again, if you feel that there's a sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, whatever it is, it's going to lead you into that particular fight or flight response, being able to kind of recognize that too. This one here is just kind of a worksheet here to practice if you feel you need to learn what they are. So definitely recommend if you feel that would be helpful. Coping with triggers. So what do we do when we are experiencing a trigger or we're trying to reduce kind of the intensity of it? A few things to look at. Plan ahead, right? So if you're aware of, if we're looking at the place triggers, right? If you know there's a particular area that's there, it may lead to being able to kind of move away from that or kind of be mindful about that situation. Now, I want to emphasize what's important to the state is that a lot of times, like for example, the place trigger, if you constantly kind of continue to not go near it or essentially avoid it, it may kind of reinforce that particular feeling, right? So that's where kind of that exposure therapy may come in to be able to kind of provide that support. So obviously it's just to kind of be mindful of where you are at in your healing journey. If you feel you're ready to kind of take on that particular trigger, you want to slowly kind of introduce yourself to it and not just kind of drive right up to it to be able to just kind of embrace it. You want to work your way there. Definitely recommend it with a therapist if that's something you want to try. But if you feel safety is of concern and you need to avoid it, then that's okay. Just be mindful again if you feel that avoidance becomes common. Eliminating or avoiding triggers. So this is kind of like what we were talking about as well too. And it says it right here. This is a temporary measure, meaning that if your safety is harmed or if you feel you need to just kind of get out of it, you can utilize the avoidance or the elimination. It's just, again, to be mindful because that trigger's still going to be there the next time, right? So if you're able to maybe avoid it this first time here, maybe once you're in that safe space and you feel you're able to process it, maybe do a little journaling. Be able to kind of reflect about that trigger and the impact that it's had on you, to ensure you're able to recognize if it happens again. Anticipating triggers. So again, kind of like what we were saying here, being able to try to anticipate what may occur, we want to plan ahead. So if we can plan ahead for the triggers, we'll be much more adequate, especially if we know if there's a particular, once we've been able to identify, let's say if it is through the ABCs, or we're just aware of an emotion or feeling that we may have, or a situation, knowing that we're able to plan ahead is the key. Um, Imageal rehearsal. So, in a way, to be able to kind of do these things here, imagine yourself. It's kind of like that internal exposure therapy that you're trying to do, which can be helpful. Recognize the options. So, being able to kind of look at the different possibilities you may have to make sure you're in control is key. Neutralizing the effects of triggers. So, being able to kind of create the distance for this, related to kind of imageal is big there, and distinguishing the past from the present. So being able to kind of distinguish the here and now, remind yourself, utilize the mindfulness, keep yourself in the present is key here. One of the kind of particular good therapy techniques I believe that is beneficial for handling triggers relates to kind of EDMR, kind of the eye rapid movement desensitization, especially related to kind of trauma. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to provoke those memories up to elicit kind of this physical responses and just kind of be there with that support to reduce that intensity. So this kind of relates to that. I believe that therapeutic technique relates to a lot of EDMR, if you're looking to just kind of explore that. But there you go. There's triggers. Great kind of breakdown through that. Hopefully you got some good info there. Like I said, the more that we're able to have that reflection on, the more we're able to have that reflection on to know what we are experiencing, what is triggering us to have these emotions, we can prepare ourselves. The more prepared we are, the better we are at being able to combat it. Okay? So, thank you again so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and I'll catch you all next time. See ya.